Let's turn our attention to a different conversation altogether, everyone. The Oronsaye report, which some persons had once said was the elephant in the room, has now become perhaps the number one talking point in the country right now, even in the face of economic hardship and food crisis. I've been joined now by Oladotu Hassan, is a lawyer and president, Yoruba Council Worldwide. He joins the conversation live via Zoom from Lagos, Nigeria. Oladotu, it's always a delight to have you join us on Global Morning.
It's a pleasure to be your program. Good morning.
Great. So let's jump right on it. When the directive by the president to pursue a full implementation of the Oronsaye report came up, some persons said it was a can of worms that was going to get opened up. Others said it was going to be some sort of Pandora's box. Where do you stand in all of this?
Well, we have to look at it from different shades and different sides of the coin, because it's quite imminent that we've always clamored for restructuring, we've called for a reduction in wastages and duplication of government agencies and duties and functions of different parastatals of government that has common and same semblance of purposes. So these and many have really culminated to the need for the Oronsaye's report for the committee to sit over government and government parastatals and mergers of those parastatals that have common duties and common functions in order to reduce time, wastages, and resources in doing same thing and having multiplicity of functions. So the Oronsaye's report is long overdue, and we must give kudos to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for taking it upon himself and without much ado going about trying to see how that report can be implemented. But in view of that same goodwill and good motives, we have to look at the legal structural values and the need for reviews of laws that establish some of these agencies, because majority of these agencies are not agencies that are just established by fiat. They are agencies that went through the statutory legislative processes, and like EFCC, ICPC now, they have their ground norm, they have their rules of engagement, they have their laws. So for mergers of all these agencies, meaning National Assembly needs to be placed at par with the harmonization laws. They must create an immediate harmonization law which ought to be passed by the National Assembly and assented to such laws by the President. So Mr. President can announce, but the functionalities and the progressive going forward will require legislative and executive synergy to achieve such.
I can imagine. It's quite a lot of work. The Oronsaye report has been here for about a decade, but we understand that between 2012 and today, more than 1,000 new agencies and ministries of departments in some cases have evolved. But I want us to leave that for a moment. As it stands right now, it is our understanding that the House of Representatives has set up a 23-man committee to look at these reports and then the efforts to implement it in full as directed by the President. And you have brilliantly made a case for the fact that most of these agencies, these ministries were, they came on stream on account of some acts of Parliament establishing them. You are a lawyer, you're familiar with the law, you understand the dynamics around all of these acts. Walk us through how cumbersome it's going to be, because this is not going to be a flash in the pan kind of process.
Well, aside from the legal reviews that have to be imminent to occur, the agencies and personnel of these agencies needs to be prepared for the rage and the tsunami of conflict. Tsunami of conflict in terms of there are different things for us to merge you. There are different things for cadres of common interest to weigh their their powers and duties over each other. But where there is patriotism, that can be better achieved. But in view of the cumbersomeness of these rules of engagement, it's not a tea party, especially when we have I'm sorry to say, we do have a docile legislative house, especially from the Senate and the House of Reps. Majority of these members hardly do sit even in the chambers of the National Assembly. And it's quite unfortunate that this same set of members will create time and create the finance, because it requires a very succinct finance, intellectual finance, to really match and pinpoint all these rules of laws together. So therefore, a lot needs to be done from the part of the government. So what I believe should have been done from the angle of Mr. President is not to put that blame game on the National Assembly. Let all these mergers come with a specific rules of an executive bill, harmonizing such. Because if the executive that is to merge is not placing it on an executive bill, the bills will go through the odious tax of first reading, second reading, committee stage, public hearing, before it becomes a law being assented by the president. And you know, in the legislative house that we have, it's going to take a number of at least 5 years, 6 years, 4 years, 3 years. No bill ever survived its own legislative house, except their interest in that bill. When a bill does not connote any interest, it takes a longer year the house exists for such bills to come into place. You've had a lot of proposed bills, but needless to say, majority of these bills don't come to fruition. So in order to reduce this cumbersomeness of this whole situation, the 23-man House Committee will not be having anything to do. They're just a bench warming. So it is not the time for bench warming committees now, but it's for strategic thinking from the office of the Secretary to the Government of Federation to sit down with the coordinating agencies and coordinating ministry, fine-tuning representatives from those agencies, making them to sit in a nucleus box, giving them a mandate of 2 weeks or 1 month to harmonize their bills and come up with an harmonized proposed bill, which will now further be reviewed by a special specialist team that will be coordinated, assigned to look into such bills. When such are now being met and having met all the standard, international best standard practice, then Mr. President will now propose that bill as an executive bill to the National Assembly, which is the Senate Joint House, to coordinate and assent. So at that level, an executive bill does not go through the odious tax of an ordinary sponsored bill. It has a time limit, and it gives a swift action, because Mr. President and the executive is the one proposing. So there will not be any room for withholding of assent. There will not be any room for delay, because we've had a scenario in the past administration of President Buhari whereby assents were being withheld. It took the National Assembly to go the 2/3 majority.
And that's a bit of a freeze there with our connection with Oladotun Hassan.
Hello?
We hope to reconnect with him as soon as it becomes possible.
Hello?
Are you still on?
Yes, I'm with you.
Please, by all means, go ahead with the narrative.
So it requires, even in the 9th and 8th Senate, it got to a point when the Senate was winding up. They just needed to collate all manners of bills, begin to assent agencies and this and that. And, we like the fire brigade approach. Mm-hmm. The Oronsoye implementation report requires a well-duty and conscientious deliverables. And it must be time-bound. So it seems the executive, Mr. President, have just made a positive announcement. But beyond the announcement by the special minister, by special advisor, what's her name, to the president on coordinating the presidency of, I can't really recall
the former NPA, the former MPA MD, right?
Yes.
Addis Abala Usman. Is it Addis Abala Usman?
Yes, Yes, Hadiza Bala Usman, you know, announcing the agencies, that is like putting the cart before the horse. The announcement is not the expected interest because majority of those, for that announcement on its own is the causation of eruption in all these agencies. There is already fear gripping some agencies, some ethnic nationalities are already calling that there is error in implementing some agencies. You will see some sponsored media brouhaha now being orchestrated by affected agencies that seems not to gel with the intention of the Oronsoye report. The Oronsoye report, as huge as it is going to cost us, it might need a long-term planning. It's not something, it's not a dash that as it's been announced, to me, the way it's been announced is just the same error that we just announced the removal of the first subsidy. So for the catastrophic tsunami of conflict not to set in before the realization of this vision, there is a need for the president to look at those ministries that are being bridged together, set up implementation panel, committees, taking the PAMSEC of these groups or legal head of legal units of all these agencies to sit and give them a timeline, merge your bills, merge your, have an harmonized bills where you have these functions, we have this function, have one duty, role, or function. Then how do you now merge the hierarchical operational modus operandi, whereby you have a DG somewhere and you have another DG, or you have a chairman of EFCC and chairman of ICCC who's going to take orders from from each other. So there must be coordinating, there must be a collegiate, a collective responsibility mandate for the time being of their tenure, because they need to merge for the time being of their tenure, so that when there is a need for renewal of tenure, it will now become a matter of rotational responsibility between EFCC today, ICCC tomorrow. Who is going to take charge? So that will be coming within their own modus operandi. Then there must be synergic distribution of duties. Then they must all have patriotic interest. That is the number one key solution. Where there is lack of patriotism, all these old goodwill motives will be lost in the wind. So for there not to be a vacuum, because there might be good intentions, but it might lead to a vacuum because there will be conflict of duties. At the end of the day, it will erupt total disaster. So for there to be averted, the Mr. President needs to work on the Secretary to the Government of the Federation and Chief of Staff to the President. Let them re-roll what the intentions of Oronsoye's report are, how these reports are going to be taken up by stage, stage of committee stage of presentation of report to Mr. President, stage of it becoming an executive bill, stage of the House receiving those executive bills, stage of implementation and test running, stage of full implementation. So there must be proper gestation period, just like pregnancy. You don't just insert spermatozoa and expect that to form a baby on the same day. It requires a growth measures to achieve such.
Interesting. Just to acknowledge the fact that on Sunday, former aviation minister Osita Chidoka himself, having been in government too, and I mean understands bureaucracy largely, said on national television that look, these efforts, no matter how laudable it is, will not solve Nigeria's problems until other fundamentals are addressed or tackled. For instance, there are also people now, not Mr. Chidoka, who have argued that in the first place, this move, these efforts to fully implement the Oronsoye report should have preceded the announcement of the removal of fuel subsidy, should have come before the appointments of ministers under President Bola Tinubu, those ministers who were inaugurated on the 21st of August last year. What's the reaction to this?
Well, I beg to disagree with Chidoka because it's easier said than done. They had the opportunity while they were in the portfolio and they mismanage the opportunity. Just like Buhari's 8 years was a total wastage, and you can see what we are here to recover and recuperating from that self-inflicted errors. And we equally, what we are doing at the moment is self-healing. And it's not going to be an easy process. Change is a very dynamic thing that when it comes, it blows.
Incidentally, the conversation around the Oronsaye reports, particularly the angle that has to do with implementation, is a long drawn-out battle. Discussion. But now we understand our guest is back on. Would you just kindly continue with that point you were making, Oladeju?
Yes, that what I want to say is that I wouldn't want to be pessimistic or trying to lean on the negative opinion of Mr. Chidoka. That is his personal view. I've seen a lot of his write-ups and his criticism and critique. It's mainly sentimental and sensationalism. So what requires is, what are we going to do as citizens to support the administration? It is, to me, a lot of condemnation that we see in the media from the opposition party and them raising eyebrow. It's not going to be the solution. There is good intention. From Oronsaye's report is not a political party's resolution. It's not a PDP thing or APC thing. It's a national policy plan of action. Just as if the need for us to review the 1990, for us to restructure this country, is going to offset a lot of things. The current status quo in these agencies and the need to merge them are immediate, and they are very imminent that we have to achieve it. How we go about it is about patriotism. So if people that need to encourage the affected agencies, we need to pacify them. We need to let them see reason that, oh, this is for the purpose of bringing and bridging the gaps, and to also reduce time, resources, monies, and their budgetary and all that, and implementation. So once all these things are together, even me, if I were to even adjudge that, do we really need a special anti-corruption agency when we have a special department in the Nigerian police that deals with anti-fraud unit of the Nigerian police? If our police are properly functional and it's an institutionalized policing, not a personal handbag of any political leader, that we don't need all these spiral agencies to function. The advent of EFCC is to begin to have a kind of an advanced bulldog that is more fearsome than the Nigerian police. That was what gave birth to EFCC. And ever since EFCC have been there, his whole gymnastics and everything end up wallowing in corruption, because majority of those that are being dragged from the same to manage EFCC are from the same wine and old bottle of the Nigerian police. The same people that are there is either you bring an assistant commissioner to head to the AIG tomorrow. At the end of the day, the same thing you are fighting end up in the belly of the lion. We end up feeding the same lion that we are training. Because you look at those that have headed those agencies before, they end up with corruption record. So this is highly going to be highly dangerous if we are not so cautious of why do we even need all these agencies. Can't we strengthen the Nigerian police? Can't we have this as a department there? Do we really need, because the same amount of you having a prosecutor is the same prosecutor that you have from the ICCC, the same prosecutor you have in the Nigerian police, the same prosecutor you have in EFCC. You go to the same court. You go for the same process and the same adjudicatory process. Then why do we have to duplicate the duty of the Nigerian police? So if we have to talk about that is just one out of many. We talk about the Nigerian Defense Academy, you have the School of Aviation, you have this. We don't need all this multiplicity. If it is for Defense Academy, everything that has to do with Defense Academy and all that, even Nigerian Police College, everybody must go to Defense Academy. There must not be a different police college, Navy school, this and that. If it's Department of Defense, let those that are going into Marine, into Navy, into Air Force, police, military police, let all have all of them under one vice chancellor, so that there will, you know that you have a common goal, you have a common principle and structure. All you just need is situation of all these schools, so that it's going to be more convenient, whereby the location and allocation of resources is just what is just needed. But there will be common goal, there will be common principle and result-oriented organization. But whereby we are beginning to, if we are not so careful in the process of us implementing Oronsaye's report, will set down an inflammatory, inflammable bodies that will not see any solution at sight. And for us not to inevitably push ourselves to the brink of nosediving the entire stateship, we need to be very careful. And that's why I'm calling that there is a need to understudy all this, to review the Oronsaye's report. Not just take the Oronsaye's report thinker. Let there be another sub-review of another round of intellectuals to review the Oronsaye's report. Are we really contented? Is the Oronsaye's report done out of malice? Is the Oronsaye's report just done out of just to make midwife and to make sure that just merger? If it's just about just merger, anybody can plus A and B. But it's all about synergizing. It is, synergizing is different from merger. Just to merge is just A and B. But for you to synergize, you read through the intention, the establishment clause of these bodies. Are they really in tandem with the reality that do we really have the budgetary plan? They must be paid double. If the EFCC are part of the Nigerian police, why not have everybody under one coordinating umbrella, rather than duplicating the police into EFCC, ICPC, and also the agencies? Those can be departments. You can have a department in anti-corruption and fraud. You can have a department that deals with administrative corruption, just like ICPC. You have a department that deals with oil and gas corruption. Then there must be separate courts. You don't have all these agencies and you leave the adjudicatory structure, the judiciary, in the same embryotic level it is right now. You need to develop the stages of these bodies too, including the courts, special court for this agency that you are about to merge together, so that it will not become a combustible element. By the time you merge all this agency, their docket and file are now being merged. Then how do you process the matters they are investigating in court, so that it will not form a means? Because once you close this agency, let me tell you, once these agencies are being closed down and they are not in existence, whatever process that they are already doing, if not properly synergized with the new agency they are going to do, it will not fly anymore. Any lawyer can just raise a preliminary objection that this body that is prosecuting is no longer in existence. There is no act that merge it up together. There is no value. So if by the announcement that's been made by the office of the president, a good lawyer will just go to court and is standing before EFCC and move a motion that this matter, this agency is no longer in existence. As announced by this Abala Mohammed on so day, this agency can no longer prosecute. And that is the law, because that is already announced by the president. But it's an error that can be tapped in if carefully not amended properly.
Interesting. We understand, government would have Nigerians believe that the original idea, the fundamental idea behind this implementation of the Oronsaye report is not just to only cut costs, which is very key. However, in addition to that, government wants to recalibrate the institutional setup of the country, particularly as it has to do with all of these MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies. In spite of that, the Association of Senior Civil Servants of Nigeria, its leadership is now saying that since the overriding idea is to cut costs, Nigeria should also go to the National Assembly and ask that we either adopt a part-time legislature or we just go with, unicameral legislature. What do you say to that?
You know, just like Mr. President was more, I will call it more, you know, the accelerated um, consideration to quickly go for non-Ronson's report is the same accelerated ailment that is affecting the entire country as a whole. And I've come and I've appeared on your program severally to educate on the need for a proper restructured country. A proper restructured country in terms of us breaking away and losing up. When we losing up and break away from the old norm of us just taking thinker and everything without us querying the ideology, I will have to still blame it on the militarized sensibility of our reasoning, that everything must be done by fiat, by rigid motives, by I can do it without caution. That is one of our mistakes. The same house that is talking about Oronson's report is an indices, is a symptom of the general ailment that is affecting the body of the country. It's more cancerous. You know, it's just like you are comparing headache to a terminal disease like cancer of the brain. So that is the National Assembly and the entire structure of government itself is more cancerous than the Oronson's report. The Oronson's is a merger of government agencies in order to reduce costs and every other value. But for president to be keenly serious, he must be ready to apply that horsewhip of intentional developmental plan and strategy of, okay, it is high time we sit and address our common problem. National Assembly, let us sit down and review this process. There have been a report of the confab report that result for unicameral legislation. The entire clamoring for state police and all this, they were part of the report of the confab report. So there were a lot of documents backing this up. And what is so important to note is that government and governance is continuum. What the administration of Jonathan did was to become a template for Buhari, but unfortunately and regrettably, the former SDF to the government, what's his name, Baba, what's his name, that's now a Labour Party man now, has now become, he's made it clear to all of us that that is a big document for the archive.
And you're talking about Babachir Lawal, right?
Yeah, Babachir Lawal. So Babachir Lawal, to me, such people are not meant to be given that appreciable value in our society. For such a man to come and just reduce the entire conversation of almost 3 to 4 months, and which brought about, at least if not solving our problem, it has solved our problem by half for us to have a conversation, and our collegiate number of people choosing from, even if they use their discretion, they still chose well, because Jesus Christ never chose all his disciples from every community. He only chose those that are useful to manage his own voyage. And the Jonathan era chose the rightful disciples and went well by ensuring that they were legal process, giving it a fiat to establish it. And aftermath of the whole process, he felt as though they had a second term to implement it. But unfortunately, Babachir Lawal announced that that document doesn't even care a hoot for our attention. And ever since then, for the past 11 years on now, that document has not been reopened. But whereby interest of that document are part of Oronson's report. Interest of that document are the police, state policing that the governors are clamoring for in view of the heightened insecurity. If that has been implemented, that would have formed part of the review, because the National Assembly cannot review itself. It requires that fiat of resolution of the people of the country. And that, in a whole sense, what that document ought to do now is for the government to establish a national plebiscite and referendum commission that will begin now, that the Mr. President just needs to match documents. That's why I say they need to look at holistic approach. And we have brains in this country that has better other climes. America, we are talking about today, England and all that, better part of the functionality of those systems are Nigerian brains. So if we have Nigerian brains committing themselves to developing other country as a developed country, and we are still in the cadre of a developing nation, we can't even apply development in our name because it seems to be nosediving rather than appreciating in our development. So what I want to advise in all essence is that the government needs to really sit down, appraise the problem, and check how best they can address this issue collectively, whereby the National Assembly, the judiciary, every functional arm of government will all tell that enough is enough for military constitution. Let us throw these documents in the dustbin. Let us start a new nation under laws and order, whereby we have an in-camera legislation, whereby we know that we're only having senators across the 36 states of the country. If there is need to establish more states, we can have 50, we can have 100, we can have that, but each state must be given an autonomous tax to be self-sustaining, not you just going cap in hand monthly without you producing to the national port. You go to the national company.
The
state that are not giving
there with the audio. But Lado Twin still making his point. Please just wrap up.
And the state that contributes are not giving their right of interest. So if we are to reestablish this country, let us establish it as every state must have a unitary laws within their state. They must have a federal law that guides the amelioration and the amalgamation of all these states. Amelioration in the sense that how do government needs to function and function well for the betterment of the people. We can have a government without having the interest of the people at heart. There must be philosophy that guides us as a nation. We must have a watchword that every citizen must be able to key in and be patriotic about. So, and there must be an example being laid. A leader cannot be siphoning money and expect his follower not to steal more. So we need a process that guarantees true federalism.
Beautifully spoken. Thank you so much, Oladochun Hassan, lawyer and president, Yoruba Council Worldwide, for coming to join us on Global Morning.
Thank you very much.
Incidentally, that's what we're leaving it to everyone. Remember that the views of our guests are their opinions and none of Global Television's. I'm Uya Mofwebe, thanking you on behalf of my colleague here for being a part of the show this morning. Tomorrow, Queen and I will be back here as well for you. Stay with us here on Global TV.